The families of the victims of the Nottingham attack last year met the Crown Prosecution Service Inspectorate on Friday, and they now feel the only way forward to finding the truth and the answers to all their questions is through a proper, full public inquiry.
Well, their worlds were crushed on June the 13th last year when Valdo Calocane stabbed Barnaby Webber and Grace Kumar when they were walking home from a night out, before then stabbing caretaker Ian Coates as he was on his way to work.
Calocane had a history of violent outbursts and had previously been sectioned 4 times. He was sentenced to an indefinite hospital order after pleading guilty for manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. And now 2 police forces are being investigated for possible failings, and the Attorney General is reviewing the case and the role of the Crown Prosecution Service over accusations that the sentence was too lenient.
Well, we're joined now by Grace's mum and dad, Dr Sinead O'Malley and Dr Sanjoy Kumar. And Barnaby's mum, Emma Webber, also joins us as well this morning. But first, let's speak to Dr Sanjoy and Dr Sinead. Thank you for coming in to talk to us about this. And, you know, I'm so sorry for everything you've been through and everything you continue to go through, because I imagine, you know, it's obviously a horrific thing to have happened, a horrific thing to go through as a family, and then to have this situation where you sort of still feel that you're trying to fight for justice, trying to fight for the right thing to happen at this stage.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ultimately, we want, from our point of view as parents, this Calocane has to stay in hospital forever or in prison forever. From our point of view, we would have preferred that he'd have been charged with murder, because there are outstanding parts of the investigation that might have negated his opportunity to plead diminished. And namely, up front and centre is the fact that he was never tested for any drugs or alcohol on the night. He'd driven a car through van through Nottingham city centre, and he wasn't even breathalyzed. I mean, it just beggars belief that toxicology was actually done on our children. Drugs and alcohol were done on our children and Mr Ian Coates, but they were not done on Valdo Calocane, just because he denied ever having drug or alcohol.
And we have a lot of questions about the CPS build-up in terms of the case in itself, because they advise when it comes to anything. Let's not forget, during June the 13th, this was first reported as a national terrorist attack on the country. So clearly, agencies all the way down to London would have been alerted as to what was happening, and would have been giving advice to the police as to how to build this case and what evidence to get. And as Sinead has said, to not actually do basic testing for things. So for someone who has murdered 3 people and then attempted to run, you know, over 3 people as well in the city and kill more people, this could have been the biggest atrocity ever in Britain. Had the potential being, and then not taking samples, basic samples, like drugs and alcohol from a driver, is absolutely ridiculous. And we also keep hearing information piecemeal. You know, we were told that Valdo Calocane came down to London the night before the attacks and was at a family barbecue. Whereas just this weekend, Will Bolton, the crime correspondent of The Telegraph, actually reported that he actually visited a violent cannabis-using gangster. So, and the police told us that he was at a family barbecue. So
there are still lots of unanswered questions to do with this, aren't they? We know that the Independent Office for Police Conduct are investigating police failings. The College of Policing are undertaking an independent review. The Quality Care Commission are investigating potential failures in the NHS. And the Attorney General has launched an investigation into the actions of the CPS. And I know that you met with the CPS Inspectorate, didn't you, on Friday. So what have they said about this?
Well, they did listen to us. We had the Coates family, James and his partner, Emma and David Webber and ourselves met, and we spoke for a number of hours, and we did feel listened to. But it's become clear that we feel the scope of the CPS investigation has to be widened. They are basically only looking at the interaction between CPS and the perpetrator up until the 13th of June. Now,
and surely that must be widened.
And we believe that the interactions afterwards is what's important.
Yeah, and the way the case was built is the important thing. And there are so many gaps within that system. And after that, after the meeting with the CPS, we had a CQC meeting. That has only got 2 weeks to report back to the Secretary of State for Health. That's not enough. And that's, of course,
the problem is that in discovering these facts, you can't change the fundamental problem for you, which is obviously the loss of your
Absolutely.
your children, but also the fact that he's been convicted of manslaughter, and therefore there is this hospital order, which means that he could be released.
He could be.
If doctors decided that he was no longer a threat or his health situation had changed.
No, absolutely.
And for you, that must be, I mean, to know that could happen, how do you deal with that?
Well, that's the point. Forever, for the rest of our lives going forward, we will have to write to the Minister of Justice to ensure that that doesn't happen. You know, when we're gone, it'll be our son who will be making sure...
And imagine that nightmare scenario that our son or our children have to, you know, and the Webbers' children and the future children, you know, the Coates' family...
We'll have to keep fighting.
Have to actually keep fighting.
To make sure he doesn't
release. This
release.
is the most ridiculous situation. And worry about this person coming out. It may not be in our lifetimes, but it may be within their lifetimes. This man needs to be locked away. He needs to be locked away for life, whether it's prison or hospital. He needs to be put away for life.
We really would have liked the reassurance that he was able to have the diminished and manslaughter, that he was... We don't dispute the fact that the judge gave the sentence based on the evidence that was given to him, but we feel that the evidence was lacking.
We can talk to Barnaby's mum, Emma Webber, who joins us now. I remember from the last conversation we had that we were told that you and Dr. Sanjoy and Dr. Sinead were consulted by the CPS on their decision to go ahead with a manslaughter charge rather than a murder charge. I remember being surprised about that at the time. What was the nature of that consultation?
It wasn't, in a simple word, it wasn't a consultation. And in the statement that we released on the steps of the court, we were rushed, hastened and railroaded the entire way. And I've actually formally complained about the fact that the word consultation, it was written in such a way that it inferred that it had been. There was no consultation. We were presented with a fait accompli. And I echo everything that Sanjoy and Sinead say, and hi guys. But I think this, just listening to what they were trying to explain, it's interesting. It's so complicated. There's so much. We've got reviews for the CPS. We've got the CQC. NHS England are doing a review. The Attorney General's involved. What's really becoming very clear to us is that whilst they're welcome and we're being listened to, we're at risk of these becoming silos. And this is a clear multi-agency and system failure. And I do feel inevitably a public inquiry is the only way forward. But actually what I wanted to say today, if I may, I think it's time to come out publicly and say to Kate Maynell, who's the Chief Constable of Nottinghamshire Police, we've had lots of correspondence over the past few weeks. Funnily enough, not very much at all before the hearing. But I want to say to her to do the right thing. Refer yourselves for the investigation, for the failures in the investigation. We've got evidence that we've given you and told you about where we've had direct contradictory information. We've been misled deliberately, as well as the missed opportunities that you had prior. This investigation has not been done properly. It's cost, obviously, our children their lives, but the investigation itself did not give us appropriate justice. We can make the complaints to the IOPC, and of course we will, and you have referred yourself for prior contact. Do the right thing, do it now. Going to the College of Policing is a learning exercise for you with Caroline Henry. It is not what we're calling for. So publicly, I'd like to address that because we're just it's being avoided in correspondence. So I think the best way is to just ask them to do the right thing.
And let's, I mean, coming to you, Dr. Sanjoy and Dr. Sinead, how much of comfort, in a sense, if you can get comfort from this situation, that you have there, the relationship with Emma? I know as families you've been joining together and being able to support each other through this, because I imagine it's just such a horrific thing to come to terms with.
Yeah, James Quote said it very, very eloquently. He said that we share an anniversary together, a very horrible anniversary. And having the other families with us means absolutely so much. There is no way that, as a single family, we could take this on. So we bring different aspects to the investigation and things that are going on. It's of enormous support. You know, we get on very well with the Webbers and very well with the Coates. And unfortunately, we've been brought together in these terrible circumstances. but it's of huge support to us. And as Emma alluded to, you know, these investigations that are happening now. So, for example, the Police and Crime Commissioner, who's referred the case to the College of Policing. College of Policing is an academic-type institution. It's not an institution that investigates the failings. What she should have done is referred the force to the IOPC at that time, and that didn't happen. So there are so many holes. Yeah. And again, to reinforce what Emma is saying, the only way you'll get truth and the only way you'll get people to give you an answer back and a sworn statement is basically getting into a public inquiry. It is the only way we will uncover this, because it is for the public, it's for public protection, and it's so that this never happens again to any other family. This hell that we are all going through just never happens again.
Thank you. We're going to be talking to the Home Office Minister, Tom Tugendhat, in a moment, and we will put the points you've made and the need for an overarching inquiry to him. And we'll also make sure that Emma's challenge to Nottinghamshire Police Constable is put to her and to get their response. But we really appreciate you all coming along, and I know it's incredibly hard, but what you're doing is very, very important to try and make sure that the right lessons are learned for the future.
Absolutely right, and never happens to anyone else.
Accountability, absolutely. And we're doing it for Gracie. She's never coming back. And we're brokenhearted, but this is the most we can do to make sure that Valdo Calocane never does this again or gets the opportunity.
Remembering her throughout this as well, isn't it? Because sometimes when it gets all caught up in the process of things, but actually that's right at the heart of it, isn't it, for you?
It's the only driving force.
And Emma's son, Barnaby, too.
And Barnaby.
Absolutely, and Ian.
Thank you. If you've been affected by any of the issues we've been discussing, you can find advice and support at itv.com/helplines.